I had the honor of meeting Representative Lewis a couple of years before he passed. And in that meeting, though it was brief, I was inspired in a way that I had not been only reading his work or seeing him on television, understanding the connection to the story of the world that I live in and seeing so much of that fight and struggle in his eyes. He shook my hand. He thanked me for my performance. And then he continued doing what I assume he always did, which was be gracious to everybody in the room who wanted to meet him. We have the same birthday. And while I realize it doesn't mean much of anything, I feel now that I know, and I just learned this year, that every time my birthday comes by, I will be able to remember what John Lewis has done for our culture, our community, and for my life personally. I hope you enjoy the piece. We all recognize the fact that if any radical social, political, and economic changes are to take place in our society, the people, the masses, must bring them about. John Lewis, 1963. How do you say thank you for a legacy that has inspired society and motivated the masses? You have to study it. Know that blood and sweat fell from his hands and country fields long before it fell from his head on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Consider that he probably never wanted any of this. If only the world would have accepted him, allowed for his equal protection under the law, permitted the schools in his hometown to educate without hindrance, maybe he would have never left Alabama. Maybe he wouldn't have been arrested over 40 times. Maybe there would have been no need to organize voters and face death riding for our freedom. Maybe instead of jail and billy clubs and dogs and fire hoses, maybe instead of constant fight and hold your ground and march directly into the mouth of the beast, maybe he would have been a pastor or an educator. But that wasn't the world that John was born into. And you'll excuse me for sounding too familiar by using his first name, but Representative Lewis was one of the few heroes of that movement that I actually got to meet. Didn't have to learn of his slaying years later in whitewashed history books. His influence diluted by a system satisfied to lie to its citizens. So now, the year after his death, on the eve of his birthday, a date we share, I pen these words in the spirit of continuing his uplifting work. Because despite my best efforts, my sons have inherited a world where they still have to march, rally, and hold their ground. And while I am still here on this earth to march, rally, and stand with them, I am blessed to be made stronger by the fruit grown of his sacrifices, watered by the blood of my forebears, revolutionaries and grandmothers, activists and sanitation workers, educators and bus drivers. How do you say thank you for a legacy? By living a life today that embraces the idea that we are tomorrow's ancestors, by fighting as he did for the freedom of everybody, by passing forward hard-won wisdom through the youth, and by holding close to where we come from and what we are struggling for. Thank you, John Lewis, for your unbreakable perseverance. May your work and sacrifice never be forgotten.